Hi everyone, good morning. It's Justin Leoy, parkslope.therapist.com. To get through grad school, everyone had to take a social work with groups class. Sometimes these classes are taught as if all the students were in group therapy with the teacher. The social work is strange. There are pros and cons to this, but it's how my class was taught way back in the mid 2000s. So we had class in the basement of the social work building at NYU. NYU, large, beautiful school, lots of money poured in, right? Well, the social work school doesn't get as much of that as, say, the law school does. So we are in the basement that social workers who, reframe everything refer to as the garden level. And of course, there was no garden anywhere. It was windowless, green and light brown room filled with 30 students and a teacher sitting in a circle. Very pre-pandemic times. Social workers only know how to sit in circles, by the way. Of course, due to the oblongness of the room and the amount of us, it was more of a frumpy oval, so our circles are more about the metaphor than anything else. But we had those desks that you may remember where the chair and the desk are kind of built in with each other, and this just means that it's impossible to keep a textbook, a notebook, or laptop like on the small sliver of surface area that you're given. Anyway, that was how the class was set up, and on this particular day we were discussing competition. In groups, in group therapy, competition is almost always present, even if it's under the guise of how polite and gracious we all are. There's still a sense of who's getting the resources, who's getting attention, who wants to fade into the background and not be noticed, but doesn't get their needs met. It's a family, it's society, it's all that. Except when you're in group therapy, you talk about all the things that you don't say around the dinner table. Now, I've been loving social work school up to this point. I love learning how to intellectualize all the things that I grew up with. Any issues I had, I was able to give fancy sounding names to. So I've been in therapy for a while at that point, so it was also great to see things from the other side of the chair. And what groups class did to me was only what art had done to me before. It caught me unawares and exposed something that I didn't want to see, but was ultimately helpful. So as we go around discussing competition and where it shows up, how it shows up, I take the opportunity to talk about how I rarely felt competitive in this particular class. My reasoning for this was because there were only two guys in the room, and at the time, that made me much more comfortable. Also, the other guy was pretty quiet, and I asked a lot of questions. I could be somewhat of a class clown with it, but I certainly don't hesitate I don't hesitate to say something that at least I think sounds witty. You see, in this moment, I thought I was just revealing something about myself, that I was aware of a need to learn to feel more comfortable with men, in groups of men. So I was thinking about growing up and never really taking to like the old boys prep school I went to, or sports or Boy Scouts. I like more mixed groups. I did a lot of theater. And I thought by talking about this I was being really vulnerable. And I was. I was being vulnerable with what I wanted to be vulnerable with. I did not reason that I was exposed. I did not realize that I was exposing something, I guess, a lot more toxic. A number of the women in the room heard something that I didn't intend. They heard that I did not feel competitive with them regarding intelligence or in terms of the work that we were training to do as social workers. That certainly wasn't what I meant, but suddenly half the class was getting really angry at me and was letting me know how insulted they felt. But I thought I was sharing my vulnerability. I thought I should be praised for that, not having to manage these unintended consequences. So for the first time in years, I said I was going to cry. And I was not a crier at that point. My breathing changed. I was actually panicking. I could not control how I was being heard or seen, and I couldn't change the narrative by saying something funny. People I liked and respected were letting me know that what I said was insulting to them, and I couldn't handle that. I mean, if Twitter were a thing at the time, I would have probably did the whole hashtag not all men. I was feeling scared, which I don't like to feel. And What I was really panicking about was that I was going to be, in modern day terms, canceled. And that scared me more than anything. So instead of this being the chance to hear what others said, to listen to responses, to learn from that, to allow myself to feel really bad as a way of self-examination, I didn't. I got defensive. I tried to explain. Nothing helped. Nothing. Nothing until a woman who was sitting next to me came to my defense. She spoke about me as a friend and as a colleague, and suddenly I could swallow all those tears that almost came out. I could regain composure. I could be the old me again. Shame was stuffed back. After class, many colleagues I'd known for a while came up to tell me in different ways that I was okay. I hadn't upset them. They didn't think differently of me. So at the time, I thought this was a great learning experience. Wow. Therapy could get underneath all the intellectualizing and unlock some parts of me that I didn't realize were restored. And that was true. What I did not understand at the time, what would take years to really begin to unravel, or start to unravel, is just how toxic masculinity and patriarchy were really entwined in this. See, I had no idea, none, that what I was saying was that I felt less threatened by the women in class. I was probably admitting to a lot of fear of competition with men and a lack of self-esteem about my own maleness and masculinity, which was good because that's something I directly took on to work on. But I was so hurt and scared, and we call it fragile now, when I was called out for what else was underneath that. And I didn't feel better until women were able to massage my male ego. This is how Terry Real, therapist and author of I Don't Want to Talk About It, one of the first books really focusing on male depression. It's how he describes psychological patriarchy. Thinking I'm being equal, but holding myself separately from women while thinking I was considering everyone on the same level. Clearly, there was a part of me at that time that was not. And where do women learn to kind of protect the patriarchy? By not letting me just sit with how shitty I was feeling. Why do they take care of me in that moment? So where did I learn to hold myself apart from women, too? This wasn't directly taught. Terry Real calls these two things the dance of contempt and the core collusion. This is one of those moments in my life that I wish never happened. But I doubt I would have learned anything if I just read about it or witnessed it in someone else. But between therapy, becoming more self-reflective, and having both men and women and non-cis people hold me accountable has all been really important to my throat. I have to make those mistakes. We do. It's what sucks about therapy and life, really. You can't just prepare for it all up here. We have to make mistakes. They need to be with other people. We have to be willing to feel what comes up, not push it away, because it might be shame, guilt, fear, anger, whatever. We need to be able to learn to move through that without explaining, without getting defensive. And that takes a strong sense of self and a willingness to work to change. And I wasn't there back then. I hope I'm better at showing up and owning when I get it wrong.